Welcome to Canvas Projects, a virtual program offering from the Pflugerville Public Library. I'm Meg Miller, an Adult Services Librarian, here with another fun project geared to ages 12 and up for you to complete. Those who register through the library calendar can pick up their material supply kits, and for everyone else watching, we hope you give these techniques a try. This month's project is a Kintsugi-inspired canvas, so let's start with a look at the supplies being provided. In our envelopes this month, you are getting 4 things. So you're getting a 12 by 12 sheet of brown butcher paper, just uncoated. We have our, I believe it is a a half-inch flat brush. We have our paint pot sets. Now you'll notice that one of the paint pots does have some writing on it there. That's because this one is not paint, it is actually Mod Podge, the MP there. So you have the 5 colors of paint. And then we have our 8 by 10 canvas here. You could do this project on a canvas panel. I like the height of the standard canvas a little bit better. So in addition to what's in the kits, you may want to grab yourself some water, paper towel here, extra paint brushes if you've got them, although we wouldn't really need them. And so for this project, we have a number of different ways. And if you aren't familiar with Kintsugi, it's actually a art of repairing pottery or ceramics with gold. And it was just kind of a fun idea that I put together with our canvas projects. Also was something where I started with the idea of using our butcher paper here and kind of crumpling it up and doing a press down to kind of spread our paint around. And then because that would have been such an abstract look to it, then you coming back with the gold paint to kind of repair those lines, I'll use air quotes there, and kind of make us into a solid design like we had on our example in the picture there. But there is also kind of another way you could go about this. So starting with our butcher paper here, we could use to put a pattern or even just an abstract, fill it with paint. Now our paint colors, you have just a standard white. This is probably not actually shuttle art. I believe I've refilled this one at some point. You have a gold. This is the Folk Art Metallic Pure Gold. The next one is a color shift because I love a little bit of sparkle or glitter, and this is the Aqua Flash spark or color shift for that. And then we have 2 blue colors. So they're a deep blue. I wanted to kind of go with that color palette. So I got this Saks True Flow heavy bodied acrylic in a phthalo blue. So it's a really nice deep blue color. I believe that's that actually might be the far one. Since I had more of that, that's likely going to be the paint pot that's a little fuller. I didn't have quite as much of this deep navy, the Apple Barrel Multi-Service Satin. So that one is going to be your other color there. And then as I said, remember this one that's marked is actually Mod Podge. So you don't want to paint with that. That'll be for another step in the process. So I could just set my canvas aside. I could take and open my paint pots. Bring my other brush over here. Not the gold, we're gonna save the gold for later, but the white and our blues and our turquoise. And I could go ahead and make a design. Now I could use the full and then just pull down later, or I could kind of set exactly how the spacing to my canvas would be. So I'm really going to measure it out. I'm going to crease that edge right at the edges. So I know that really all I need to paint on is that area there, because I won't actually use the extra amount of paper. So I could do something that is like a pattern. So just kind of some floral petals. As that dries, I'll come back with one of the other colors and just doing kind of a repetitive pattern, and I'm just doing a little bit of a swirl. setting my paintbrush down and then pulling it around. I could do just completely abstract, pulling all of that paint off of the paintbrush. Clean and grab one of our other colors. That phthalo blue really is so deep and beautiful. I want to make sure I get my paintbrush really good and clean. Come in here with this. I suppose I could do a like actual design, like a trees or something like that, and then pull that as well, because we'll be pulling it back together. This color shift, I liked that you could see some of that brown of the paper underneath. So I'm just gonna lay myself a big, almost maybe this is my background color as I go around those flowers, and so on and so forth. Until what I had, I would go ahead and start tearing down, and then would set this aside for now. Once I had allowed that particular painted sheet to dry, so that's going to take some time, I'm going to just tear it up. So these are edge pieces here, edge pieces. They're not exactly in the same spot where I pulled them off of my original. And this was just a very abstract, I went through with those different colors, the white, there's some of that teal in there where I can see kind of the brown underneath, that darker blue coming back across. There's a really good, probably doesn't translate that well in the video, but there's a great line of that color shift right down there. And then I have used Mod Podge to go ahead and attach this to my canvas. And then at this stage, I would be able to grab my gold and go ahead and fill those lines. But we're going to step aside. Let's talk about a slightly different way that we could go about this project. So I can take, and for this one I may want multiple. I'm going to just really just get some of that paint and get it onto my canvas. Big blobs are fine. That's part of the reason I chose the bigger brush for this project. Just bringing some of that paint all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and grab this other blue, even though I know I've got some of that phthalo on my brush. Ooh. Just really adding paint to the canvas. Now I am going to switch to the other brush I just cleaned for this teal, because I want some separation with that. There we go. Yeah, just really adding paint to the canvas, not in any kind of major plan, because what we're going to do is we're going to grab that piece of butcher paper and we're going to bring that around. Now I do want to clean this brush a little bit to get into that white paint. There we go. Here's our white paint. I'm going to fill in some of those other areas, maybe at our edges. Here, here. Ooh, that's a big dollop. Just those spaces where I don't have the blues really. There we go. All right. So, and then if this was the technique I wanted to go for, so I wouldn't have painted on my butcher paper, it's completely blank. I'm just going to go ahead and crumple it some so I get some interesting lines and places where the paper will be raised. I'm going to pull that back open and I'm going to lay it right over my canvas and start manipulating that paint underneath. I like projects like this. The paint feels so fun under there, and you can really just start to like push it all the way to the edges. You can see I'm using little circular motions here that is going to mix my paint somewhat. So if I was just kind of pressing down, feeling for any places where the canvas paint is kind of bubbled up, and I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to lift. All right, so then I can actually take and turn this. I'm just going to turn it 90 degrees, and I'm going to go ahead and do that again. So I'm going to move more of that paint around so that I'm really getting good coverage, and I can repeat that process. So there we go. We're getting a little bit more. I want to come down here to those edges. I've got that white paint, but I really want to get, there we go, some good color as it goes around. We'll do that same up here. See, I got a good amount of blue up here, so I'm going to come up like this. Do that again, get some of that blue paint to transfer, and peel away. So now I really have just this great, like, kind of organic look, and I can come back in and decide where those areas that will repair with the gold. But we'll again let this set this aside to dry. So for this particular project, I've gone ahead and done one ahead. So here's one that's dry. And you see we've got all those different areas. So I'm going to get my brush. Now with this part of this particular choice of technique, you wouldn't really need the Mod Podge. So there's nothing that we're gluing down onto the canvas. We're just using this natural, the way our kind of abstract came out, and I'm just going to come through. I'm just getting a little bit of paint on the edge of that paintbrush so that I can kind of make that line of paint. And I'm just going to make those choices about where our lines of repair would have been, and just adding those pops of gold to this design. I really like kind of the natural way this bottom part came out. That looks really great ringed in gold. We've got some more over here. And just keep pulling that along. Now right here I actually don't have very much paint at all, so we could go ahead and paint that wholly with gold so that it is a bigger area and a little bit more of a pop, as you see there. Now I would likely come back over after that paint had dried and give it a little bit more coverage so that we really get a good layer of gold on that, and I'm not seeing too much canvas going through the back. And I can just kind of slowly go through, decide where it is that I want those pieces to be, those pops of gold. As I come through, we could start at an edge and really come down. That looks awesome. So yes, so with this particular technique, you would not need the Mod Podge at all. So we don't even need that. We are putting paint directly onto our canvas. Then we're crinkling our butcher paper and putting that over. And that does add, like now that this paint is dry, I've got this extra paper that I could do something else with. So say I had another canvas, I could go ahead and tear this up, and then that technique is where we used the Mod Podge. So I put, gonna be the same brush, you're gonna clean it. Actually, I can use this canvas. So I'm just gonna tear a corner out here. And I'm really tearing it. I'm not using scissors because I want those natural shapes of like something if it was broken. So I'm going to kind of line that up there and see that I can pull that off the bottom. So here I'll empty my Mod Podge, or open my Mod Podge, apologies. Got a little bit on my thumb there. I'm just going to grab some of that podge on my brush, and I'm going to put it right on the back of my piece of butcher paper where my paint has dried on. And then I've got some on the brush still, so I'm just going to put that right onto my canvas to help with that. Alright, let's see here. And I'm just going to lay that right down, going right over the edge. If any of the edges don't kind of want to seem to lay down, I can put a little podge underneath them. Come back and fill in. Once that's dried, we're going to come in and fill in with the gold. So this canvas that I showed earlier, I have Mod Podged it down. It's pretty dry. I might wait a little bit longer to let it dry, but for purposes of a video, as we're getting close to the end, now I've got kind of these natural areas where that gold paint is going to be able to go. And I'm just going to come right in and fill that gold paint in all over those areas I have created. I'm not worried about going over into the painted paper because that will just be a fill, as it were, and it will give a really great look of that gold kind of repaired area. I'm not using a ton of paint, so I should be able to, when this dry, come back and do maybe another layer so that we really get that gold kind of bright in there and popping along the lines. So yes, as always, we would love to see how your Kintsugi inspired paints, canvas projects come out. Look at that. And then I would just keep going. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to next time.